Here we are in Chapter 10, Part 4, talking about workplace relationships. Some of the most important relationships that you'll have in your life will be relationships that you form in your workplaces. Some of you may settle into a job and keep it for an entire career. Some of you will bounce around from job to job over your working lifespan, whatever that may end up being. But you will find, looking back, that a lot of these relationships that you form have a huge impact on you. Starting here with the different types of communication that occur within the workplace, there are 4 different types of communication. The first one's called lateral communication. Lateral communication is between equals or peers. It's also known as horizontal communication or peer-to-peer communication. So this is, in my estimation, this is where actual work gets done. So day to day, as we're interacting with each other to accomplish our tasks, we are performing lateral communication. Then we have what's called upward communication, which is subordinates talking to superiors. This will be things like business reports, progress reports, requests for assistance, or new materials, or new forms of support in various ways. Then we have downward communication, which is, as the name implies, from higher levels to lower levels. So this will be job instructions, rationale. This will be training. This will be feedback or criticism. So it's the upper managers talking to subordinates and things along those lines. And the final type of communication here is what's called grapevine messages. This is that informal communication network. This is where rumors get passed around. This is where we work around formal channels to pass information. Some guidelines for communicating in the workplace, and these are good to keep in mind. One is respect a colleague's time and territory. So don't insist on going into their office or into their space and taking up their time. Whenever you have a request or you want to chat with somebody, ask them if it's a good time before you just make that assumption. Whenever it comes to electronic communication, you would think that we would have a pretty decent idea of what it means to use the proper etiquette, but we oftentimes don't. The way you use your electronic devices in the workplace communicates things. The way you contact members of your business or your company also says something about you. If you use your personal cell versus using your office phone, or you use your office email for things other than work, it's generally seen as at least slightly negative. Personally, I like to keep business business and personal personal, and so I don't exchange my cell oftentimes with anything business related. I use my office phone, with certain exceptions, and then I use my office email for only work. And so that's the way I do things. Not everyone does things the same way. Figure out what's normal in your company. We want to use the appropriate mediums to discuss certain things with superiors or subordinates. Generally, in the workplace, it's a good idea to avoid touching other people, except when it comes to shaking hands. There may be some exceptions in greeting. Sometimes you may get a hug, but even then, you need to be careful about those kinds of things. They can be considered sexual harassment or sexual advances, or inappropriate at the very least, uncomfortable. So we want to be very careful about those things, doing only what's appropriate for a workplace relationship. Don't shut yourself off from everybody else in the office either. You want to be willing to communicate. Communication is a big part of how we get work done, as we discussed on the previous slide with lateral communication. And then in the workplace, it's important to be polite to everyone in the office. Even if you're not friends, you still need to be polite. It makes the office environment that much better. We can talk for hours about networking, but don't worry, we won't. We'll talk very briefly about networking. Your network is an important thing for you to establish. As I said earlier, those workplace relationships that you have, those can be very important. Part of that's because of your network that you establish. We are all familiar with social networks and how most of the time those are online, but even workplace networks are moving to online platforms in many cases. Sometimes you'll have a company that has their own internal social network that they use for communicating ideas in business, or at the very least, maybe it's a company Facebook page or something like that that's directed to employees. There are formal networks, networks meant to accomplish things within the confines of rules and regulations in the workplace. And then you have informal networks, which are where you call in favors and where you establish favors, kind of that IOU system. The thing about networking is that it needs to be mutually beneficial. So you need to put in as much work and as many favors as you take out. So we can't just expect people to do things for us. It's much like friendships, where there needs to be mutual benefit in order for any kind of payout. And that concept is slightly different than this, the idea of a mentoring relationship. More often than not, with a mentoring relationship, you have the mentor and the mentee. The mentor provides the information, the mentee receives the information. The mentor gets very little benefit out of the interaction. But it does benefit your overall organization when you have your senior members of your business training the younger or more inexperienced members. It can do things like improving morale because people feel more like they have some guidance and know what they're doing. Mentoring can help decrease turnover, again, for some of the same reasons, because whenever people are better trained, they feel more confident and maybe they're more likely to stay. This also can help keep people with your company longer, positioning them for advancement, the mentees. So when the mentor decides to retire or gets promoted, then there's someone ready to take their place. But through this mentoring relationship, you also get some conversation. So the mentor may actually receive some benefits in fresh perspective coming from their protege or their mentee. And then finally, for this video, we need to touch on the idea of romantic relationships in the workplace. Overall, it's a good idea to avoid it. Most businesses would prefer that their employees not be romantically involved with each other. Most would probably prefer that they not even be close friends outside of the workplace, because it can generate some negativity, some potential problems. Now, first we'll talk about the advantages, though. If you have a romantic relationship between coworkers, when things are going well, it's probable that because they share a similar job, they'll have similar interests, so the relationship will flourish. And if you have a good relationship, even a romantic relationship with a coworker, it can make you happier about going to work because you get to see that romantic partner. You get to spend time with them. However, there are probably more disadvantages than advantages. When we have romantic relationships in the workplace and that couple works together, it can cause some things to be uncomfortable for other coworkers, whether that's public displays of affection or it's just breakdown of communication because you don't want to say the wrong thing about their partner. That can make things a little bit uncomfortable. Management can become difficult, especially in a case where the romantic involvement is across chains of command, so superior to subordinate. There may be some favoritism that crops up, or at least the appearance of favoritism. Or that superior person in the higher level of authority, they may try to reverse the favoritism, and that may cause problems within the relationship. So instead of saying yes to the significant other's proposal, they say no solely because I don't want it to look like there's favoritism involved, even if it's the best idea. So that's something we want to avoid. And then, of course, the last one, if that romantic relationship does break down, breakups are more complicated when you work together. It almost becomes a question of, okay, who quits the job? And so you don't really want to set yourself up for that. So, when at all possible, avoid romantic relationships in the workplace.